if that was a big source of conflict, you usually, as an adult, want to kind of say like, hey, that's not going to be me. That's not going to be my story. Any problem that you just sweep under the rug, eventually it festers, it keeps growing and growing until there's no, it explodes, right? Like then it becomes like a huge argument over something minuscule or smaller, but it's not minuscule to you because you've just been sweeping these issues under the rug for so long, right? Yeah. You can still make a marriage like that work. You just have to find what that common ground looks like for both of you. So for a lot of couples too, like the one that's more of the saver or money conscious, typically they like managing the day-to-day budget. They're going in and seeing like exactly what spending is happening on a weekly basis.
Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
All right, Thriving in Tandem, folks. We are back, and we're going to talk about money and marriage and why are finances such a hot topic in many households?
Ooh, this will get a little steamy, I think.
Not that we've ever had an argument about money.
Never.
We had an argument about money before we even got married. I think this is
sure we did.
We weren't even engaged. We're having disagreements about money. So anyways, this is going to be a great topic. And we have today Deb Meyer. She's a certified financial planner, the award-winning author of Redefining Family Wealth, and host of the Beyond Budgets podcast, which we were on.
Yes, we had a good time on
episode 19. Just in case you wanted to, the link is in the show notes. and she's also the founder of WorthyNest. So she's, not just probably in her own life, but as a financial planner, sitting around the dinner table or coffee table with husband and wives and talking about money.
And children, I'm sure, too.
I'm sure she's heard it all.
Mom, I need money.
And so the good thing is that you're not alone. Or we're not alone. That we're not the only couple. You're not the only couple that have disagreements over finances. I mean, if you Google it, right, it's one of the most common disagreements. And sadly, one of the most common reasons for divorce. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't get divorced, there's usually some kind of emotional separation, right? And so none of that is good. And so we're going to pick Deb's brain, and especially before we even hit record, there's some juicy stuff that in our own life that maybe we'll bring up.
I know. I want to learn more about it. And how do you navigate it?
Yeah, because you can't be the expert without having gone through it yourself, right?
So true.
You need life experience for sure.
Exactly. So Deb, welcome to the show.
Yes, good to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm a little nervous about answering some of the personal questions, but I will tackle them.
Well, that's what we did not prep you for, is that personal is part of this show, right? This is, it's all about marriage and business, and, hey, there's stuff that happens. It's not just about business, right? The personal life is part of the business. You cannot separate the two. It's part of your life. And so let's be real, right? So first question, Deb, is, do you and your husband still fight over money?
I don't think we do much. I think we're actually a weird anomaly. And I say that because we're both very like-minded when it comes to money. So we both have that kind of saver mindset. From a young age, both of us started working. I was 13 when I had my first real paid job, not babysitting, but I worked in a senior citizen retirement community as a waitress. And my husband was a caddy, so he started earning money at age 12 or 13. And we both just were big savers growing up. And that carried into our marriage. So we don't technically argue that much about money, but I work with plenty of clients where there's different money personalities and mindsets. And I know it can often be a pretty hot topic, especially if you're more inclined to save and your spouse is more inclined to spend, or vice versa. I think it can be a really sensitive topic for a lot of couples. And, hopefully in talking with you today, it will help dispel the myth that okay, money arguments are a bad omen over your marriage. They don't have to be at all. They can be a fruitful way that you can grow closer together when you do come to the same wavelength on some of the financial decisions.
Yeah, so yeah, you probably are an anomaly of both savers, because most couples that we know, and even us, one's a spender, one's a saver. I'm the spender.
I'm the spender.
No, you're not. You're definitely the saver. And she will squeeze the last piece of toothpaste out of the. I'm like, honey, there's nothing in there. There's a little drop. I know there's a drop. I'm like, I'm going to squeeze. Anyways, so you've never. I mean, so do you ever?
I shouldn't say we've never argued. There have been disagreements sometimes over like, right. Okay, is that a need or a want? I mean, I remember early on in our marriage, my husband went on some home shopping network and saw this inversion table.
Oh yeah.
You know, where you like hang upside down and it's supposed to stretch out your back, and he bought it, and I just was like, do we really need this? I think it was like $350 or something. I'm like, do we really need an inversion table? And like, how much are we going to truly use this? And I think we had it for like a year or two, and then realized he used it a lot in that first week of buying it. And then after that, it was collecting dust in the basement.
Well, sell it on eBay. Recoup some of the money.
We got rid of it like once we were moving, and we're just like, all right, probably $350 we didn't need to spend, especially as a newly married couple.
Yes. Hey, but his back must have been great.
That first week.
That first week, exactly. I know. But I mean, I think the key point, whether you argue a lot about money or don't argue as much, is just having some ground rules on like bigger purchases. Like what constitutes a big purchase? Is it something $100 or more? Is it $250 or more? Like what dollar amount would you say, hey, I want to check in with my spouse before I make this purchase? And for us, that's, evolved over the years as we've had higher income and things like that, where we don't really discuss much on, if we spend a couple $100 at Costco because we have a family of 5, I don't have to go and check with my husband before I bring up that purchase, right?
That's the bare minimum you're going to spend at Costco anyway.
Exactly.
They call it the $200.
I get out like for under $400. It's a good day.
Well, this was before hyperinflation, but they called it the $200 store, right? You can't get out there with less than $200 with groceries or whatever.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see if anyone actually spends less than $200 at Costco today. Like I don't know. It'd be hard to.
We have,
but it's just because I just really want to get one thing, and then
it works if you don't take your husband with you.
But typically we have, but those are anomalies that usually you're a couple $100 out, because
you're putting your blinders on, right? Like you're just like, I'm going to this one little section.
Because I mean, we just bought a pack of ribeye, right? The 3-pack of ribeyes, and that's still $100. That was $100 or $70.
That I wasn't planning on buying, you guys. See, my husband came, so that was an extra $100.
Well, she said I'm going in there to get meat. I was in line to get gas.
I was getting chicken. So she went in. I was getting some
meat.
Pork chops, and I all got everything in the basket that I wanted. And I'm ready to walk to the checker, and I run into Robert. I'm like, honey, I got everything.
Chicken and ground turkey to me is not meat.
Pork chops.
Or pork chops. So I'm like, no, where's the ribeye? Where's the New York steak? So I'll throw it go. So
then Robert had to go back, get his ribeye, get his wine. And then okay, so that was so much for getting out of there.
But the wine was a good deal. Honey.
Oh, yeah, he always thought.
So there you go, right? There you go. There you go. $200. Well, that's at least $200 right there. So, anyways, so I guess. Why do you see, why is this always such a hot topic? I guess kind of alluded to it. Usually we kind of come from different backgrounds and how we view money, spender, saver. But, kind of digging it out, why is this such a hot topic, and why is it so hard for couples to get on the same page?
Well, I think for a lot of us, like in childhood, we come with some baggage, right? Like we see what our parents did or did not do with money, and we see what kind of example they set for us. And, if conflict was high in the house over money growing up, it's hard to, and it doesn't matter what source of conflict it is, but in this case, we're talking about money. If that was a big source of conflict, you usually, as an adult, want to kind of say like, hey, that's not going to be me. That's not going to be my story. So maybe you even get in a disposition where you're like, I'm just not even going to talk about it, because I just want to avoid the topic completely. And if I don't engage in an argument over it, then we'll just kind of sweep it under the rug. But like any problem that you just sweep under the rug, eventually it festers, it keeps growing and growing until there's no, it explodes, right? Like then it becomes like a huge argument over something minuscule or smaller, but it's not minuscule to you because you've just been sweeping these issues under the rug for so long, right?
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of people, it's just understanding that when you're approaching any kind of money conversations with your spouse, you have to be in a spot where you don't want to have judgment over what upbringing they had or, conversations over money in their household. And you also want to approach it from a place of knowing that they might have a different money personality than you. They might be more naturally inclined to spend or naturally inclined to save, and you might be the opposite. And that's okay. You can still make a marriage like that work. You just have to find what that common ground looks like for both of you. So for a lot of couples too, like the one that's more of the saver or money conscious, typically they like managing the day-to-day budget. They're going in and seeing like exactly what spending is happening on a weekly basis. They're tracking that.
Oh, yeah.
But
She's
really bringing their conversation.
What did you buy? Yeah, she goes to the credit card bill. So what's this? What's that?
But it's a good conversation to have like once in a while, not every single week, to have to bring that spouse that's not as interested in the day-to-day budgeting, having to bring that spouse into it, but maybe just on a monthly basis saying like, here's how our spending went for the month. This is where we were under and over budget. Is that something you want to keep, showing that we're at a deficit here, or is that something we want to work towards and really change? Do we need to increase the amount that we have budgeted for that category, or do we need to make some modifications on how we're actually like, okay, if we say we're at $300 a month, but we're actually at $325, what changes are we going to make to actually come down to the $300? Or do we need to adjust the goal to the $325? So just having some of those check-ins on a more regular basis. And again, it doesn't have to be weekly, but maybe even just a monthly cadence or bi-weekly, just to have some open conversations around money that don't rise to that level of arguing, but just discussion. So.
Well, and I think it's good to look over your bill every month too, honey.
I know. I'm just
because
giving a hard time.
I give me a hard time because sometimes there's things on there that aren't your charges.
True.
And a lot of times people, I hear this all the time, like, oh, I had all these subscriptions, like 20 subscriptions, and they forgot that they are paying for Netflix 2 times. You know what I mean? They have 2 subscriptions and they didn't realize it, or just things like that come up, and you're like, so you don't notice it until you look at the bill.
Right. Yeah. Well, or I mean, fraud is rampant right now with credit cards and things. I've had so many clients, myself included, where we've had to get different cards because of fraudulent charges. I think one of our credit cards last year got stolen, and there was a lot of online gambling.
Oh, wow. Oh, jeez.
I'm like, this is not me.
Are you sure?
$200 here and there, and I know my husband's not doing it. Something's going wrong. But like you said, just being able to spot that on the credit card bill, like really review it in detail and understand, okay, this is where we were actually at.
Yeah, funny story recently. So kids like, did you watch this movie or did you buy this movie? And I'm like, no. And so we called, I think, the credit card company or Prime or whatever to cancel
Amazon
it.
Amazon
to cancel it. And then another movie popped up, and then I was noticing on our Pandora, just on the TV, unless on the Pandora, I was like, those are some weird channels that just popped up. I was like a Mexican channel or thing that popped. I was like, I'm like, what? And then I was just on another movie. I'm like, I didn't watch that. And so I call Amazon, and I'm like, yeah, why? I'm getting these things popping up, and neither of us are buying these movies. And I'm like, what's going on? And then he said, and he had to say it a couple times before it clicked. He says, okay, what? He was naming off the devices that Amazon Prime was hooked up to. And so I was like, yeah. I was like, but then all of a sudden he said something and it clicked. I said, oh, that's our old TV, the one we gave away to Salvation Army or something.
Still using.
Yes. And I never shut off the apps. And I'm like,
no.
And then so it finally clicked, Pandora, this thing's going on, and, Prime, and the movies we weren't buying. And I was like, oh. So I had to go into our I forgot what I did. I shut the shit. Oh, basically, I just canceled
That device.
the device.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I went in, and so all the other ones like Pandora and stuff, I had to shut those things down and then reinstall a new password, that kind of stuff. So, anyways, I guess to your points about checking the bill. Because otherwise we would have had a lot of movies, because the new owner of our old TV obviously doesn't care because it's activated and they're just going hog wild. Yeah.
I mean, well, and even just like subscriptions, I mean, a lot of us, we forget, like, okay, we've signed up for Amazon, we've signed up for Hulu, we've signed up for whatever. And like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't technically have cable TV, but I'm subscribed to a lot of different things where I probably am paying more than I would just on a standard cable plan. So
we talked about that
I
before.
don't know. Gosh, I mean,
we talked about before how they decentralize everything. Now it's like, what would be great is we have one subscription that had everything. Oh, that's cable.
That's called cable. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, even just those things coming together once in a while and saying, hey, are these all subscriptions that we're actually using actively on a regular basis that we're getting enjoyment from? And I mean, I talk a lot with clients about values in our conversations too. Like, is this consistent with our values? Is our value sitting around in front of TV and having multiple subscriptions, or is it going out and doing more experiential trips? Like, what are the things that we value, and really parlaying that into the budgeting decisions or cash flow decisions we're making?
Yeah. So we're kind of already touching upon it, how you kind of get on the same page is having those, whether it's weekly or monthly meetings on finances. What are some other tips? I'm like, how did the two of you, get on and stay on the same page with financial?
Yeah, for us, we do some check-ins periodically where I'll show him, again, I focus more, I guess, on the investing aspect too. So I'm not just looking at budgeting, but I'm tracking everything. I'm kind of like our household CFO, if you wanted to put a name to it. Yeah. So I'm looking at that on a fairly regular basis just to monitor and make sure things are where they're supposed to be. But about once a month, I'll bring him in and we'll go through our financial planning software and really see, okay, let's take a look at the net worth statement. Let's see how things have progressed in terms of our overall plan and the goals that we're working towards. So that's an important part of it too. It's not just about the day-to-day cash flow decisions, but really some of the bigger goals and dreams around retirement planning or saving for education. I mean, just having a good framework or check-in so your spouse knows, the spouse that's maybe not as interested in finance, have them be part of those conversations. So if something unexpected happened to you, they would still have a good grasp of where to track things down, what, passwords and stuff need to be used to access online software. All of those kinds of things are really important just to engage your spouse in, just as a practical matter. And again, from an emergency basis. So I think having those, I prefer monthly check-ins just because we have a very busy, both of us are working full time and we have 3 boys to raise, and it's just hard to find pockets of time more regular than that. But for us, it's monthly check-ins and really just seeing where we're on track or not on track with some of our goals.
Before we started recording, you were saying that you had just made a big move. Can you give us some tips about that? Because they say we have not moved a lot, or myself, I have not moved a lot. But I hear people say how expensive it is. It's like way more expensive than you think it's going to be. So how did you guys come up with the...
She's talking to Deb.
I didn't mean to cough. Getting over from a sickness last week. But it's true.
But as we hear their story, right? How their move,
how you navigate all that so that you don't move and then you're like big time in debt because you didn't realize all these unforeseen things.
Yeah,
because I don't know if you can relate, Deb. Unforeseen.
Well, yeah. So just to give a little bit of context, I went to college in Missouri and met my husband here, Brian. We've been married 17 years, and he's from Missouri originally. So about 5 years ago, we decided to move to Southwest Florida. So we went from Missouri to Southwest Florida, really just to be there for my parents. My mom was ill at the time. And for us, just making that big of a move was huge. Like it was financially, it wasn't that big of a move for us because we were able to do some things pretty reasonably priced just to make the physical move and transition. But we were shocked by prices moving from Florida back to Missouri this past summer. And just to give a little bit more context, we were in a market too where the housing prices in Florida aren't great right now. Like they've actually been dropping. Houses sit on the market longer in our area. I know the rest of the US, there's a lot of pockets where housing prices are staying, really high and very little inventory, but that wasn't the case in Southwest Florida. So for us, we were also navigating whether we should sell or just keep our existing property and rent it out. So in our case, we had a little bit of extra complexity because we were looking at renting out our existing Florida home, but also moving to Missouri and just preparing for saving to close on the home here in Missouri. And then when we were doing our inspection, there were a couple of things that came out with like the windows that would likely need replacement, and that can be very expensive. So what we had saved from a down payment perspective, we actually modified once we knew like, okay, we have some other bigger projects here, like windows that we need to take care of. So maybe in the financial planner, I revised things on what we were putting down as a down payment, and then what we were financing through the mortgage. And luckily, we saved enough to be able to more than pay for new windows and some other renovation work for this house. But when we actually moved here, we realized there was a very different set of issues with the house in the plumbing. So we've had to renovate every one of our bathrooms since moving into this new beautiful house. And so the money that was earmarked for windows all went to bathroom renovations. And like appliances, there were a lot of relatively new appliances, but like weren't working well, or it just, yeah. So, I mean, we ended up spending like I said, we had budgeted a certain amount for windows, and all of that went to these other renovations. So I know our situation is probably unique, and not everyone's going to have alarming issues once they close on their home that they weren't expecting, that are, tens of thousands of dollars. But at least in our situation, it was great that we had some of that foresight to set aside extra cash so we could make these necessary repairs right off the bat and get moved in. So,
well, yeah, because you weren't expecting that. You were thinking, probably like me, I'm just going to move in. Everything's going to be working. It's going to be great.
Right.
Yeah, I think the principle is right to the saving part, because for the unknown, they call it the emergency savings. So you never know. And so whenever you are planning to, whether it's like you move or make a big purchase or some kind of transition, right, to kind of set aside money for the just in case, because those just in cases are things you don't plan for. Like
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and even just like getting our house in Florida ready to rent, the realtors that we were using to secure renters, they highly recommended we replace our carpeting with luxury vinyl floor. So, from like a foot traffic perspective, because in a rental home, like carpet's not, even if you got new carpet, it's not, there's no insurance or anything associated with wear and tear, things like that. There's different rules because it's now a rental property. So, so that was like an added expense as well, just trying to get new flooring throughout the house, like the luxury vinyl flooring. And we painted the entire house. I mean, my husband painted just to save money because it was going to be several $1,000s just to hire that out. So again, there's a lot of things that like your kind of fixed costs going into it of, okay, it's going to cost X number of dollars to have a moving company come. And that amount is very high as well, especially if you're going a long distance. So that was an area that I had in my mind what we had paid to move from Missouri to Florida the first time. And I was thinking it would be similar, and it was more than like quadruple that amount.
Wow.
To do like a true international, or not an international, a national moving company, to load it on a truck, have it sit, and then deliver it sometime 2 to 3 weeks later. So what we ended up doing instead, it was a creative workaround, but we had our oldest son who his friend is a couple of years older and had just graduated high school. He and a buddy rented a Penske truck, and they took all of our stuff from Florida and then drove it up to Missouri, unpacked it. They were like our moving guys, and we paid about half the price that the national moving company had quoted. So
cheap child labor.
So she must not have had very much stuff then, right? Because it was just like one of those.
We still had a fair amount of stuff. Oh. Yeah, I mean, they rented the largest Penske truck they could find, but yeah.
So how would you get a spender on the same page, right? Because this is, well, anyways. So I'm doing this for the savers in the audience. How do you get the spender to kind of realize, okay, we can spend money, but at the same time, we can't just spend away our inheritance, or so to speak, right? How do we kind of reel them back in so they can see, and it's not just a power struggle. Oh, you don't want me to have fun, or you just want to penny pinch everything and all that kind of stuff. But how can you get the spender on the same page and realize that they don't have to spend as much? We're not going to say not to spend, but reasonably, so that we can put money aside and even invest for the future.
Well, I think it's important for people who are naturally inclined to spend to get joy from that spending, right? So if they're, let's just say in this example, both spouses are working and they, have similar income, okay? In that case, the one that's naturally inclined to save more could take care of some of the more unfun expenses like mortgage, utilities, those kinds of things, right? And then the one that's more inclined to spend, you could have them do more of like if they have kids, fun kids activities. If it's travel as a couple, doing more of the travel expenditures, like having more joy with the spending that they're doing, rather than like this feeling of, angst that I have to pay this bill, right? Is it a bill, or is it something fun I get to do? So kind of reframing it from that perspective of like knowing that these are the expenses regardless, but who's actually going to take care of paying those expenses or giving in that manner. I have also seen some couples where they'll have their main joint account for some of those fixed expenses, but then again, kind of open a separate account for that person that's more naturally inclined to spend, but with the idea that like they don't have to run all of those expenses through their spouse. Like they can just do with it. It's more of a discretionary kind of fun fund for them. So I personally don't have separate accounts. My husband and I just have joint accounts, but I do think that can be a good balance for people that have just some of those natural inclinations. And then I think the other important part too is around some of those savings goals, really tying that with why you're doing it. Like if we're saving for retirement, it's so we can retire at XYZ age. And getting that person who is more naturally inclined to spend just excited about the possibility of what they're going to be doing at that retirement age. And if it's saving for education expenses, like, okay, coming to terms with what dollar amount needs to be saved, because college for kids, I mean, it can vary widely depending upon, do you go in-state, do you go out of state, public or private university, like those expenses can really add up. But even just coming to terms on like, okay, what specific type of college do we want to be able to try to help pay for, or at least partially pay for, as our kids get older. So those are some of the conversations I think people can be having, just of knowing that it doesn't have to be a drudgery event of saving. There can be a higher purpose or goal behind it, and really connecting that future self to the present self.
So yeah, I guess what you're saying, Deb, is, it's important when you're talking about trying to get a spender a little bit more fiscally responsible. And, again, raise my hand. You got to frame it in a way that it's still fun, and the spender still gets to spend, because I think there's a innate thing, right? They still want to spend, but at least from my experience, it wasn't so much the amount. So like that was important as opposed to the activity. So I remember when we were first married, we realized like we have what we need, and if we're going to buy something or need something or want something during the year, we'll kind of buy it. So do we need to add more stuff in Christmas time? And so what we did was we just created a budget of, literally, I remember one year was $50 each to spend on each other. And then what can you get for $50?
How creative can you be?
That idea, yeah.
So it was like, the game was like, how much can we get for $50? Like how many things, right? And so from stocking stuffers to the stuff you want to put in a tree. And that was fun, actually. That was really fun. And that filled my need to spend. And also kind of forced the creativity. I think that was even more fun than the spending part. So
yeah.
Totally.
Well, and that's a good tool that you can use in those years when times are a little tougher anyway, just to not make it about this high dollar amount, but just how can we get creative and how can we have fun with it? And it's fun for both people, whether you're a spender or a saver, naturally.
Yeah, even the kids. Get kids involved too.
Well, and sometimes I think it's more about the memories than it is the gift, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing something fun as a family or as a couple.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reports just around experiences versus tangible things, and how you can derive so much more benefit from those experiences over just accumulating more stuff.
Yeah. So Deb, this was a great interview. I mean, this is always a timely topic, right? This is a timeless topic, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And so you also have a free download for our listeners, the Marriage and Money Guide. So talk to us a little bit about that, what they can expect, and why should they click the link in the show notes and get that.
Yeah. Well, I think for a lot of couples, like you said, I mean, this can be a source of tension in the marriage, and hopefully that guide is just going to encourage you that, okay, it's okay to talk about money and have more regular conversations. What are some of the good starting questions to ask in those conversations? What's a good rhythm or cadence? So that guide is going to contain all of that information. It's just 4 simple questions to kind of get some of that kick-started, and then being able to go back and revisit those questions over time. That's where you really make that measurable progress. I mean, whether you're doing some of this DIY or you're working with an advisor, it's all about having those regular check-ins and continuing to monitor over time where you were and where you want to be heading directionally in the future.
Yeah. And then you also get your book, Redefining Family Wealth. So they can get that on the website, or how do they get a copy of that?
Yeah. WorthyNest.com/book is a great resource to get the book. And that has links. You can get it in online format if you want on the website directly, or you could go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, Target, all over the place. There's lots of ways to purchase it. But it really does take a lot of the lessons I've learned in working with clients over several years. I mean, I've been doing financial advising since 2006, so quite a long time. And just trying to take some of those practical lessons learned in working with a lot of one-on-one couples, and just helping build a framework for a solid financial future for your family. I think it's budgeting is one aspect of that, and that can take you to a certain level. But once you want to go beyond basic budgeting, there's a lot of other facets of financial advisory work that we do as financial planners that, I just want to make that more accessible to people, regardless of whether they're working one-on-one with an advisor.
Great. So any parting words to the couples listening about?
I would say just regardless of where you've been in the past, I think you can forge a new future together, a brighter one, and just understand that God is with you on this journey too. I mean, I work with a lot of Christian and Catholic parents, and a lot of it's just going back in prayer time and really reflecting on some of these bigger life decisions like moves or changing to, if you're staying in your same local vicinity, just changing to a new home within that local vicinity. Some of those bigger decisions around early retirement or college funding, if you have kids, like those are all things that have implications for many years. And it's important to not just be internally focused, but really thinking about where's God leading you in that if you're a person of prayer and consideration there.
Oh, great. Well, thanks, Deb. I mean, those are all important issues, and we certainly do a lot of that. And then as we're contemplating our own move, we'll have to talk to you and see any lessons learned. So, Deb, thanks you
happy to share.
Yes. So, Deb, thanks for being on the show, and really appreciate the wisdom you shared. And for those of you listening, I know you got something out of it because you're still on. So please share this with another married entrepreneur that needs to hear this, because, hey, marriage and money, it's always a hot topic, even if it's not an argument, but it's always an issue. And so share this, and then please, we'd love a review. And until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.